I feel like Zack Snyder's Justice League means something different to a lot of people. If you're like me and were hyped for Justice League back in 2017 and were really disappointed by it, then this movie shows what that movie should have been originally, and so you'd have been a lot more excited for the Snyder Cut when it was announced. But if you're someone who's not really into comic book movies, then you may not even know what Zack Snyder's Justice League actually is. For those of you that are confused, Zack Snyder was working on Justice League, which was scheduled for release in 2017. His daughter, Autumn Snyder, tragically took her own life, so he understandably had to step back from the project. The executives at Warner Bros. Really wanted to get their bonuses, so instead of just delaying the film and letting Snyder come back to the project in his own time, they hired Joss Whedon, the director of the first two Avengers films, to cut the film down into a 2-hour movie, which is the film we saw in cinemas. This new movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League, is Zack Snyder's version of the film that he intended to release back in 2017. If you want my short, spoiler-free review, here it is. Zack Snyder's Justice League is a really good movie, and it's a huge improvement over the theatrical cut. It's definitely not a perfect movie. It's a bit bloated, it's a bit slow in the first half, the colours are really washed out, and the villain is still really generic. But I think that's outweighed by everything great this film has to offer. The action is pretty good, and the characters are way better. The Flash, Aquaman, and especially Cyborg are much better in this movie than Justice League. I also like how it balanced its comedy. You definitely feel the stakes are really high, but there are some pretty funny moments. In addition, it showed all the heroes saving people, which is something loads of superhero movies just completely forget to do. Finally, I like how the movie gives you the sense that the Justice League is an actual team. They don't feel like individuals who are just fighting the same enemy. They feel united and like they actually help one another, which we see on multiple occasions. Overall, Zack Snyder's Justice League isn't the greatest movie ever made, but it's way better than the one we saw in 2017, and Zack Snyder closed out his trilogy on a pretty high note. Now, for those of you that have seen it, let's move on to my spoiler review. Here's a few complaints I had with the film. First off, the movie is really long, with a runtime of just over 4 hours, making it the longest movie I've ever seen. I don't mind the fact that the runtime is long, but I don't think the film justifies it. The first half is a little slow, and a lot of the scenes are really drawn out, like when we see a bunch of locals singing a song about Aquaman. I think if this got released in cinemas, the film would have been about 3.5 hours long, but since it was put straight on TVs, Zack Snyder wanted to give fans everything he had, which does make the movie suffer a bit. Also, the main villain, Steppenwolf, is still really generic. He's improved a bit from the theatrical cut, since he actually has a decent motivation. He did something that Darkseid didn't like, and he got exiled for it, so he's trying to prove his worth and loyalty by destroying Earth for him. His motivation is good, but it's not really developed a lot, so he's not as good as he could be. There's also just nothing very memorable about him, and even though he has a good motivation, he often feels like he just wants world domination and nothing more, which isn't very interesting. The CGI for Steppenwolf is also pretty bad as well. He doesn't look like a character taken straight out of a PS2 game, but he still doesn't look that good, and I didn't really like his design either. One thing I didn't even notice on my first viewing was that a lot of the colours are really washed out. I didn't realise that until a reviewer pointed out that Mira is supposed to have red hair, and in this movie she looks more like she has ginger hair. The reason this is a problem is because movies need to engage you, and a big way they do this visually is with colour. If a film isn't nice to look at, then you're just not going to watch it. So it's important that colours pop and that the movie is vibrant to keep you interested. Colour is also really important for things like setting the mood in scenes, so having them be washed out can take away from that effect. I also thought Lois Lane was a bit underused in this movie. She does play a pretty important role, but we don't get much time with her, and I would have liked to see more from her, since she was one of the people most affected by Superman's death. Also, kind of linked to that, Martian Manhunter's inclusion in the movie was really weird. It was cool to see him, but having him pretend to be Clark's mum to talk to Lois was kind of strange. And in the final battle, I just kept thinking about why he wasn't there to help the Justice League. I think they should have taken out that scene where he is disguised as Clark's mum, and just show him at the end, when he introduces himself to Bruce, so that he doesn't come across as someone who just ignored a fight that put the whole universe at stake. Finally, Zack Snyder's Justice League has a lot of endings. What I mean by that is that at the end, there were a lot of scenes that I thought would be the end of the movie, but it just kept going, which felt a little weird, and it made the final moments drag on for a bit too long in my opinion. So far, I've not been really kind to this movie, but a lot of my complaints are things that I can forgive, and a lot of my praises for the movie are a lot more major. One of the biggest things I like is that the Justice League actually feels like a team. In the final battle, it doesn't seem like they're all separate people with one common enemy, it seems like they're people working together to save the universe. They also show them saving people, which is really great. I remember in one scene in Justice League, they were all just wasting so much time coming up with a plan and bickering with each other, but in the Snyder Cut, they jump in and manage to save everyone who got kidnapped. Even though they feel like a team, they don't always agree with each other, which differentiates every member and creates a bit of conflict to keep things interesting, like when Aquaman doesn't want to revive Superman even though everyone else does. The characters are also really improved. The most improved characters for me are Cyborg, The Flash, and Aquaman, in that order. Cyborg's character arc was really great, and it was really nice seeing him going from hating his dad for putting him in his condition, to forgiving his dad and finding a way to make the best out of his situation. The scene where he has to separate the mother boxes is really emotional, because it shows how much he's changed over the course of the movie. The Flash was greatly improved as well. In Joss Whedon's cut, he just came off as an idiot, and he never really did anything heroic. Even when he did something heroic, it was just so they could make a joke about how much better a different hero is. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, he's presented as a kid who's in over his head, and each time he does something heroic, it gets overshadowed by someone else. But it gets us excited for when he gets to do something really heroic, and it pays off really well. The scene where the Flash reverses time is really cool, and it's easily my favourite scene in the film. I also like what they did with Aquaman. He starts off as someone who doesn't care what happens, but by the end we clearly see that he does care. His friendship with Cyborg by the end is also really good, and you see he's actually a little worried for him. The way this film balances its comedy is also really good. It has more jokes than Snyder's previous films, like Batman vs Superman, but it also doesn't try to make everything a joke like Joss Whedon's Justice League did, so it feels like a good balance. The comedy also doesn't make every character look like a joke, so it's much better than the theatrical cut. This also helps you realise how high the stakes are, because they're not constantly being undermined by bad jokes. Finally, the most important thing about this movie is that it's all Zack Snyder's vision. There's no studio interference or anything like that, and the movie is all the better for it. You may not like Zack Snyder's films, but I don't think whether the film's good or bad is what really matters. What matters is that Zack Snyder was able to complete a film that he was passionate about and loved making, and that he wanted to share with all of us, which is the only thing you can really ask from a director. You may not like his darker take on these characters, but it's his interpretation, and he had full creative control over his film, which I definitely support, because it just leads to better movies when the director is making something they want to make. Overall, Zack Snyder's Justice League is a really good movie that's an immense improvement over the 2017 theatrical cut. I really like the film's balance between comedy and more serious moments, and it improved characters that were supposed to be introduced in this film a lot. Even though it's a little bloated, and the main villain is still really generic, I think that's outweighed by everything the film gets right, and most importantly, it was all Zack Snyder's vision, and he gave us a film he wanted to make. All of this makes Zack Snyder's Justice League a really good film. That's one of my favourite DCEU movies, and if you haven't already seen it, I'd recommend that you go watch it.